What if I told you that every mermaid sighting throughout history, every ancient culture's water spirit legend, every sailor's tale of being lured by beautiful voices in the deep, wasn't mythology at all? What if the answer to one of humanity's most enduring mysteries was hidden in plain sight, buried in ancient texts that powerful institutions decided you shouldn't read? Today, I'm going to reveal something that will completely change how you view both biblical history and these mysterious aquatic beings. Because the truth about mermaids isn't found in Disney movies or folklore, it's written in blood and stone in some of the oldest spiritual texts ever discovered. And the story is far more terrifying than you could ever imagine. Picture this: 1947, the Judean desert. A young Bedouin shepherd searching for lost sheep stumbles upon what would become the archaeological discovery of the century. Hidden in caves for nearly 2,000 years were scrolls that would shake the foundations of religious understanding. These weren't just any ancient texts. These were the Dead Sea Scrolls, and among them was a book so controversial, so revealing, that it was deliberately excluded from the Bible we know today, the Book of Enoch. Now here's what they don't tell you in Sunday school. Enoch wasn't some random biblical figure. He was Noah's great-grandfather, the man who walked with God and was taken up to heaven without dying. And the book bearing his name, it fills in the gaps that the traditional Bible deliberately leaves blank. The question you should be asking yourself right now is this: if the Book of Enoch was found alongside Genesis, Isaiah, and every other book we consider sacred, why was it the only one they decided to hide from us? To understand the true origin of mermaids, we need to go back to a time when the boundary between heaven and earth wasn't just crossed, it was obliterated. The Book of Enoch tells us about the Watchers. These weren't your typical angels singing hosannas in heaven. These were God's elite, powerful, beautiful beings tasked with observing humanity from afar. But observation wasn't enough. Enoch describes how 200 of these watchers, led by one named Azazel, made a decision that would damn not just themselves, but countless generations to come. They descended to Mount Hermon and did the unthinkable. They took human women as wives. Now, this wasn't some romantic love story. This was a cosmic violation that created something the world had never seen before. The Nephilim, giants, being so powerful and corrupt that they would eventually push God to flood the entire earth. But here's the part they never tell you. The consequences didn't end with the Watchers or their giant offspring. The human women involved, they faced a punishment so specific, so eternally binding, that it created an entirely new category of being. Slower, more ominous tone. War Enoch, chapter 19, verse 2. Let me read this to you exactly as it appears. The women also of the angels who went astray shall become sirens. Sirens. Not the sanitized Disney version you're thinking of. The word siren in ancient texts refers to something far more sinister. Aquatic beings cursed to lure men to their deaths in the depths of the ocean. Think about this logically for a moment. If these women were cursed by God himself for their unholy union with fallen angels, would that curse make them more beautiful, more alluring, or would it transform them into something that reflects the horror of their transgression? According to first-hand encounters, and yes, these still happen today, mermaids are not the beautiful, flowing-haired creatures of legend. Witnesses describe beings with completely black, almond-shaped eyes, razor-sharp teeth designed for tearing flesh, gills carved into their faces like wounds, webbed, clawed fingers, voices that can override human will through supernatural hypnosis. These aren't mythical beauties. These are cursed beings trapped between their human past and their demonic present. Here's something that should make every Christian pause and think. Revelation 21. 1 tells us that in the new earth there will be no more sea, no more oceans. Why would God, who created the seas and called them good, completely eliminate them from his perfect new creation? The answer becomes clear when you understand what inhabits those depths. The oceans aren't just home to fish and whales. They're the domain of these cursed marine spirits, beings so corrupt that their very presence makes the waters themselves unholy. Think about every maritime disaster in history, every unexplained disappearance at sea, every sailor's tale of voices calling from the depths. What if these weren't accidents or hallucinations? What if something was actively hunting? The evidence for these beings spans millennia and crosses every culture on Earth. But there's one piece of evidence that most people have never heard about, and it's absolutely chilling. In ancient Egypt, archaeologists discovered a wall painting that depicts something extraordinary. A full-scale war between humans and aquatic humanoids. Not a myth, not a legend, a historical record of actual combat. The Egyptians didn't paint fantasies on their sacred walls. They recorded history, victories, defeats, and warnings for future generations. This painting suggests that at some point, these marine spirits became such a threat that organized military action was required. And they're still out there. Let me share an encounter that was reported just recently, one that perfectly illustrates the true nature of these beings. A woman was swimming in a lake during a family gathering. Her relatives were nearby, cooking and laughing around a fire. Suddenly, she climbed onto a rock to rest, and something impossible happened. Everything went silent, not just quiet, completely unnaturally silent. No wind, no birds, no voices from her family just yards away, as if sound itself had been surgically removed from the world. That's when she saw it. A humanoid figure emerged from the water with those characteristic black almond-shaped eyes. But here's the truly terrifying part. It didn't speak. Instead, thoughts that weren't her own began forming in her mind. I can make you jump in the water. Not a request, not a suggestion, a statement of power. She fought against the compulsion, terror overriding the supernatural influence, and the creature, disappointed by her resistance, simply sank back into the depths and vanished. How many people do you think weren't strong enough to resist? Now here's what really disturbs me. Why aren't we taught about the Book of Enoch in churches? Why was it excluded from the Bible when it was found with all the other accepted books? The answer is uncomfortable, but necessary. Because the Book of Enoch reveals things that certain institutions would prefer remain hidden. It explains the supernatural in ways that make people ask dangerous questions about what else might be out there, what other beings share our world, and what other truths have been deliberately obscured. When you control information, you control belief. When you control belief, you control behavior. But truth has a way of surfacing, like bodies in water. Every single culture with access to large bodies of water has stories of aquatic humanoids. Every single one. The Mesopotamians called them Apkallu. The Greeks knew them as sirens and nereids. The Slavs feared the Rusalka Caribbean cultures speak of Aikaia. Japanese folklore describes the Ningyo African traditions tell of Mamiwata. The names change, but the description remains remarkably consistent. Intelligent aquatic beings with supernatural abilities who interact with humans, usually with deadly results. Are we really supposed to believe that every culture independently invented the exact same myth? Or is it more logical that they were all describing encounters with the same cursed beings? What makes these encounters so terrifying isn't just their appearance, it's their capabilities. Witnesses consistently report 3 supernatural abilities. Telepathic communication. They can place thoughts directly into human minds, bypassing normal sensory input entirely. Hypnotic voice. Control. Their vocalizations can override human will, creating an irresistible compulsion to enter the water. Environmental manipulation. They can create zones of supernatural silence, eliminating all ambient sound to disorient their targets. These aren't natural abilities. These are the residual powers of beings who were once connected to fallen angels, cursed, but not powerless. Every year, thousands of people vanish without a trace in lakes, rivers, and oceans worldwide. Bodies that are never recovered. Experienced swimmers who simply disappear in calm water. Boats found empty with no sign of struggle. The official explanations range from drowning to equipment failure to human trafficking. But what if there's another explanation that investigators aren't allowed to consider? What if some of these disappearances aren't accidents at all? Think about it. If you were a predator that lived in water, had supernatural abilities to lure prey, and had been perfecting your hunting techniques for thousands of years, wouldn't you be extremely good at making your kills look like accidents? You might be thinking, this is interesting, but why should I care about ancient curses and biblical creatures? Because they're not ancient history. They're current events. These beings are still active, still encountered, still taking people. And the more we pretend they don't exist, the more vulnerable we become. Knowledge is protection. Understanding the true nature of these encounters means you're prepared if you ever find yourself in a situation where supernatural silence falls, where voices call from dark water, where thoughts that aren't your own begin forming in your mind. But here's the hope in all this darkness. This curse isn't permanent. Revelation tells us that God will create new heavens and a new earth, and there will be no more sea. These cursed beings, trapped in their aquatic prison for millennia, will finally face their ultimate judgment. The waters that have been their domain will be eliminated entirely, and with them, the marine spirits that have terrorized humanity since the days of the Watchers. Until that day comes, though, they remain active, hunting, waiting, calling from the depths. I've shared this information not to create fear, but to create awareness. The truth about mermaids, about these cursed marine spirits, has been hidden for too long. If you've ever had an unexplained encounter near water, if you've ever felt an unnatural compulsion to enter dark depths, if you've ever experienced supernatural silence in an aquatic environment, you're not alone and you're not crazy. You've encountered something that religious institutions would prefer you never understand. But now you do. So I'll leave you with this. If the Book of Enoch was deliberately hidden from the Bible despite being found with every other accepted book, what else are they not telling us? What other supernatural truths are buried in ancient texts that never made it to your Sunday school class? The rabbit hole goes deeper than mermaids, friends. Much deeper. But that's a story for another video. If this information has opened your eyes to possibilities you never considered, hit that like button and subscribe for more hidden truths from ancient texts. And please, share your own encounters in the comments below. Every story matters. Every witness adds another piece to the puzzle, because the truth isn't just stranger than fiction. It's more terrifying than anything Hollywood could ever create. And it's been swimming in the depths all along, waiting for someone brave enough to dive beneath the surface of accepted reality. The question isn't whether mermaids are real. The question is, now that you know what they really are, what are you going to do about it?